Welcome to the deep dive. This is the place where we really try to distill complex source material into crystal clear knowledge.
Right, giving you a shortcut to really understanding a topic without all the noise.
And today, we are taking on a monumental subject.
Yeah.
The United States of America. We're going to move far beyond the headlines.
But way beyond.
To explore the sheer scale, the surprising history, and, the eccentric details that truly make the nation what it is.
And it's such a necessary mission today. I mean, we usually see the USA through global media, right? It's all politics or it's stereotypes.
Exactly.
Our source stack for this is completely different. It's a collection of these fascinating facts and historical nuggets. We're talking arcane geographical records, foundational governance documents, everything.
So the goal is synthesis then?
The goal is synthesis. It's about understanding why this country functions as this incredibly diverse, often contradictory, and just endlessly fascinating patchwork quilt.
I love that image, the patchwork quilt. Because if you even try to grasp the scale, it's the third largest country by population, getting close to 340 million people.
And fourth largest by land area. It's just massive.
It is. And you realize it can't possibly be a single uniform identity. It's thousands of microcultures and ecosystems all stitched together. It's a place where the majestic, think of Denali and the historically complex.
Like colonial land grabs?
Right. They just coexist. And it's all often defined by this surprising whimsy.
Well, that vast scale, the sheer geographic and demographic density, that's what dictates the incredible variety in everything, from weather and agriculture to, regional laws and customs. It's the baseline.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Our deep dive today is structured to handle that vastness. We're going to start by analyzing America's geographic extremes and its land acquisitions.
Then we'll transition into its complex history of expansion and the colossal engine of its higher education system.
And finally, we'll dive into the culture, the quirky customs, the food, and the foundational documents that give the U.S. its structural identity and its global reach. So get ready for some deeply contextualized aha moments. So let's start with the physical reality. America is truly a geographic choose-your-own-adventure book.
That's such a great way to put it.
It's one of the few places on Earth where you could travel from the tropics of a Caribbean island to the polar tundra of the Arctic Circle and never leave U.S. governmental jurisdiction.
And that journey, it has to start with defining what the U.S. actually is. Because it's so much more than just the contiguous 48 states.
Right. We have to detail the governmental sprawl and look, beyond the 50 states. So obviously you have the 50 states, each with its own robust governance structure.
Sure.
But then you have Washington, D.C. It's the federal district home to the White House and Congress. And it is a genuinely quirky anomaly. It's not a state.
No, it's not a state, which means its residents have no voting representation in the Senate and only a non-voting delegate in the House of Representatives.
Which is wild.
And this lack of voting power, despite being, the literal center of government, it fuels this active and ongoing movement for statehood. It raises this core question about representation and taxation.
But the complexity just deepens when you add the territories.
Oh, absolutely. Our sources confirm there are 14 territories in total, though 9 of them are uninhabited, mostly rock formations or really remote islands.
So the 5 key population centers are where the unique cultural and political dynamics really come into play. We're talking about Puerto Rico with its immense cultural richness.
Guam, which is so crucial strategically in the Western Pacific.
The U.S. Virgin Islands, American Samoa, and the Northern Mariana Islands. And these places, they all have different degrees of self-governance, but their relationship with the federal government is, it's complicated. We'll explore that more later.
And if you really want to talk about scale, you have to look at the sheer geographic ambition of the nation's acquisition history. And that starts with Alaska.
Yes, the purchase of Alaska.
From Russia in 1867. It's often treated like a historical footnote, but it was a massive geopolitical move. It was purchased for about $7.2 million.
Which, when you calculate it per acre, comes out to something like 2 cents.
2 cents an acre. It sounds like an absolute steal now, but at the time.
Right. It was called Seward's Folly.
Yeah.
People thought it was just a frozen, worthless wasteland.
What they completely missed was the strategic value. The purchase wasn't just about resource potential. It was about preventing British or Canadian expansion across North America.
So the goal was geopolitical. to complete the continental arc.
Exactly. And the result is staggering. Alaska is now more than twice the size of Texas. It's these vast, untamed wilderness areas that contribute so much to the U.S. strategic position in the Arctic. That one single acquisition is a powerful illustration of the long-term continental scale thinking that really defined 19th century American policy.
And this is where it gets really, really interesting, though, when you bring that scale to bear on the weather. You called it the climatic buffet.
That is the perfect description for it. The USA is potentially the only country on Earth that contains all 5 major climate zones recognized by the Köppen classification system.
Wow.
I mean, just think about the variety that implies. You've got the tropical climate in Hawaii and parts of Florida, high temperatures, heavy rainfall, supporting these lush rainforests.
Then you can just jump to the dry, arid deserts of Arizona and the Southwest, where life is totally defined by the scarcity of water.
Right. And then the temperate, mild climates define the Pacific Northwest with its predictable rainfall and cooler summers. Then the continental climate covers the vast Midwest.
Famous for those 4 distinct seasons.
Exactly, including, harsh, often brutal winters and really hot summers. And then finally you have the polar expanses of northern Alaska, which are essentially high-latitude deserts where the ground stays frozen all year round.
The implications of that range are just huge. It influences everything from resource management, especially water law in the West, to the incredible variety in American agriculture.
And it absolutely brings the extremes. We aren't just talking about average weather, we're talking about world records.
Get this. Our sources detailed the specific extreme records that the U.S. holds. Look at Death Valley, California. In 1913, it registered 134 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 57 Celsius.
And that temperature is still, to this day, the hottest officially recorded temperature on Earth.
On the entire planet.
Yeah.
The contrast is just mind-boggling. You take that intense heat and compare it with the cold record set in Prospect Creek, Alaska.
Right, up near the Dalton Highway.
Yeah. In 1971, the temperature there plunged to a bone-chilling minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's minus 62 Celsius.
So the nation holds the record for both the most extreme hot and the most extreme cold temperatures recorded in North America. This geographic tension, it kind of embodies the entire narrative of the United States.
Which sets the stage perfectly for analyzing North America's vertical axis, the absolutely highest point and the absolute lowest.
So starting with the high, we have Denali in Alaska, towering majestically to 20,310 feet.
It's not just the highest point in North America.
No, it's also one of the world's most challenging peaks because of its extreme latitude. That means there's lower oxygen density and just wildly unpredictable weather.
It's such a profound symbol of untamed wilderness, and I find the history of its name so fascinating.
The renaming,
yeah. It was officially renamed in 2015 to honor its indigenous Athabascan name, which translates simply and so fittingly to the High One. And that act was a crucial step in recognizing the long cultural history of the land, moving away from the name Mount McKinley.
And like you said, climbing Denali is a serious, serious undertaking. Our sources point out that only about half of the expeditions actually succeed.
Wow.
The dangers aren't just from the elevation, but from the dynamic weather. These brutal winds, rapid temperature drops, and the constant threat of avalanches. And remember, Denali is in Alaska, a state that already has more coastline than the rest of the U.S. combined.
And over 130 active volcanoes.
It's a hotspot of geological activity.
And the contrast is just so immediate and dramatic. A plane ride away, relatively speaking, and we plunge to the continent's lowest low, Badwater Basin in Death Valley, California, which sits at 282 feet below sea level.
Badwater is a geological marvel. It's this immense salt flat, a dazzling white expanse that's the remnant of an ancient prehistoric lake.
And that intense heat you described, often over 120 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer, it causes any remaining moisture to just evaporate almost instantly.
Yeah, leaving behind these thick layers of salt, it's a landscape that is just constantly challenging human endurance.
The atmosphere there is so arid, so intense, that the air itself kind of plays tricks on you. There's this surprising phenomenon they call phantom rain.
Phantom rain.
Yeah. Sometimes the temperature's so high and the humidity is so low that rain actually evaporates completely before the droplets can even hit the ground.
Wow. So you can see it falling, but it never arrives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's this visual representation of the extreme dryness, and it just embodies the environmental resilience you need to survive in that region.
Okay, so moving from that intense arid environment to the immense scale of fresh water, we have to talk about water wonders and preservation.
We have to start with Lake Superior. I mean, it is truly a natural giant.
Lake Superior, straddling the U.S.-Canada border, is the world's largest freshwater lake by surface area. And the statistics, they really defy easy comprehension.
Get this. It holds an estimated 3 quadrillion gallons of water.
Which is enough water, if you spread it evenly, to cover all of North and South America in a foot of water.
That just puts its scale into perspective. It is the largest part of the Great Lakes system, which together contains 21% of the world's surface fresh water.
And historically, this system was the economic artery of the Midwest. It moved iron ore, grain.
But it also earned that ominous nickname, the graveyard of the Great Lakes.
Right, because of the high number of shipwrecks caused by these sudden, severe storms and its sheer, untamed vastness. The ecological health of the Great Lakes is a constant concern, too. They face these severe challenges from invasive species like the sea lamprey and historical industrial pollution.
And that vulnerability underscores the profound commitment to preservation that's reflected in the U.S. government's actions.
Which brings us directly to the national park system.
Absolutely.
The U.S. is committed to conservation through 423 national park sites. That includes monuments, seashores, historical parks, plus nearly 2,500 state parks. The system is just monumental.
And Yellowstone, established way back in 1872, wasn't just a U.S. achievement. It set the global standard. It became the world's first national park.
And it protects these unique geothermal features, like Old Faithful and critical wildlife herds, including bison and wolves. This whole system is a direct and powerful reflection of the conservation legacy championed by figures like President Teddy Roosevelt.
Roosevelt used the Antiquities Act of 1906 extensively, didn't
She did. It allowed him to unilaterally declare federal lands and historically significant sites as protected national monuments. He could override industrial or local opposition to prevent the privatization or exploitation of these natural wonders.
It makes the conservation effort feel more heroic than just a bullet point on a list.
It does. And this commitment remains central to the national psyche. It's worth noting that park visits surged dramatically during the pandemic.
That's right.
It shows that Americans still seek solace, space, and a connection to the wild heart of the nation. And that balance between human enjoyment, hiking, camping, stargazing, and essential ecological protection, that remains the system's core mission.
Okay, so we've covered the physical land. Let's transition now from the geography that defines the nation to the historical engine that built it and the intellectual engine that sustains it. Because America's physical expansion directly shapes its political and demographic identity today.
Right. And the story of From Colonies to Giant is just this whirlwind of territorial growth, driven mostly by that 19th century philosophy of manifest destiny.
The belief that the U.S. was, divinely ordained to expand across the entire continent.
And the pivotal moment has to be the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, without a doubt. That transaction with France instantly doubled the nation's size for $15 million. It opened up the Mississippi River and the entire West for settlement.
What's so fascinating there is the immediate political debate it sparked. Thomas Jefferson, who was a strict constructionist of the Constitution, worried he didn't have the explicit constitutional authority to make such a massive land acquisition.
But the strategic and economic necessity was just too great to ignore. It was a huge philosophical dilemma that actually set a precedent for expanding executive power.
And then later, the acquisition of the Southwest, mostly through the Mexican-American War, completed that continental footprint, adding states like California and Texas.
But we can't discuss this explosive growth without addressing the critical context. This expansion wasn't into empty land. It involved conflict and the tragic, often forced displacement of Native American populations.
You talking about the Trails of Tears?
Yes. This was the forced relocation, primarily under the Indian Removal Act of 1830, of thousands of Native Americans, the Cherokee Creek Seminole Nations, from their ancestral homes in the southeast to territories west of the Mississippi.
And the scale of the suffering was just immense. Thousands died from disease, starvation, and exposure during these forced marches.
And it was fueled largely by the economic interests of Southern planters who wanted that land for cotton cultivation. So to report on this impartially, we have to convey that the romanticized notion of continental expansion is just inextricably linked to these violent acts of displacement.
Which fundamentally shaped land ownership and resource distribution as we know it today.
Absolutely. And you can see a tangible illustration of this constant growth just by looking at the flag. The U.S. flag has changed 27 times throughout its history to add stars as new states join the Union.
That's incredible.
It reflects that rapid pace of westward movement and state formation. The current 50-star version has been active since 1960, when Alaska and Hawaii joined.
But the European footprint on the continent goes much further back than the English colonies that won the Revolution.
Oh, much further. We really need to reset the clock and talk about the earliest European footprint.
Right. Americans typically center their colonial narrative around Jamestown in 1607 and Plymouth in 1620.
But the Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon landed in Florida in 1513. That's nearly a century before either English settlement. And he was famously on a quest for the mythical Fountain of Youth,
which highlights that strong and often minimized Spanish influence. The key result was the founding of St. Augustine in 1565.
And St. Augustine is the oldest continuously occupied European settlement in the continental United States.
So why is that fact so important?
Because it completely flips the historical narrative away from being purely English-centric. St. Augustine survived because it was a strategic military outpost designed to protect Spanish trade routes. Its unique architecture, like the Castillo de San Marcos.
That's the massive fort built from coquina, right? The local shell rock.
Exactly. It speaks to centuries of Spanish colonial defense strategy. The fact that the U.S. absorbed this existing non-English colonial structure helps explain the diverse cultural and architectural foundations of the nation.
Okay, let's pivot from physical expansion to intellectual expansion and talk about the colossal higher education system.
The numbers are just dizzying. The U.S. has over 5,300 degree-granting colleges and universities. What's fascinating here, and what really separates the U.S. model from many centralized European systems, is the sheer diversity of structure.
Right. The system attempts to democratize knowledge through this vast spectrum of options. You have major research institutions like MIT and Stanford focused on pioneering research and graduate studies.
Then you have the smaller liberal arts colleges dedicated to undergraduate teaching and critical thinking. And, crucially, you have this massive network of affordable community colleges,
which offer these accessible pathways to vocational training or transfers to four-year institutions.
And the scale of investment is equally massive. The U.S. spends more on higher education, both public and private, than most nations globally. This system is a powerful economic engine. It attracts hundreds of thousands of international students every year who contribute billions to the economy and fuel American scientific and technological advancement.
And within that huge system, we have to recognize Harvard's legacy.
Harvard, established in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1636. It holds the title of the USA's oldest institution of higher learning.
And it was founded by Puritan colonists, right?
Yeah.
And it started as a seminary to train clergy.
It did, which highlights that initial religious motivation that underpins so much of early American education. It evolved rapidly, though. By the 19th century, it had transformed from a regional religious college into a global leader in law, business, and science.
Its alumni roster is the stuff of legend. 8 U.S. presidents, countless cabinet members, Nobel laureates. It just underscores the deep intellectual heritage of New England and the power of private endowment.
But if Harvard represents the oldest tradition, then Oberlin College in Ohio represents the true pioneers of equality and social change.
Oberlin broke some immense societal barriers. In 1841, it became the first U.S. institution to award bachelor's degrees to women.
And it had already admitted women alongside men 4 years earlier in 1837. This was a completely radical stance in a time when higher education was almost exclusively for men.
And the progressive history doesn't stop there.
No, it doesn't. Oberlin was also a crucial early adopter of admitting Black students long before it was the national norm. It fostered true inclusivity. It was active in the abolition movement, serving as a significant station on the Underground Railroad.
So this history paved the way for massive social movements, producing famous suffragists like Lucy Stone.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that education isn't just about accumulating knowledge. It's a central engine for profound social and political change.
Okay, now we move into the whimsy. The food, the customs, and the sometimes baffling elements of everyday life that are uniquely American. Let's explore American ingenuity in sweets and fast food.
American innovation is so often focused on efficiency and convenience, whether that's putting a rocket on the moon or putting food on a stick.
Precisely. Let's start with a sweet success. The lollipop. It was invented in New Haven, Connecticut in 1908 by a man named George Smith.
And his genius idea was simply placing hard candy on a stick.
It solved the problem of sticky fingers. and made candy so much more mobile.
And the fun fact is the naming. He reportedly named it after his favorite racehorse, Lollipop.
I love that.
It's this small, sticky slice of Americana that went on to revolutionize the candy industry globally. But moving from small-scale sweets to a global empire, we have to look at KFC's humble start.
Colonel Harlan Sanders, who, we have to clarify, is an honorary colonel.
Right, a distinction from the state of Kentucky, not a military rank.
He started Kentucky Fried Chicken in a tiny cafe in Corbin, Kentucky. And it was there that he perfected that famous, still-secret recipe of 11 herbs and spices.
What's truly inspiring about the Colonel is the sheer resilience, the entrepreneurial spirit. He began franchising in 1952, but his real global expansion started when he was already 65 years old.
Wow.
He was operating initially on a small Social Security check of just $105. He literally drove thousands of miles across the country, cooking chicken for restaurant owners out of the trunk of his car.
That's incredible.
His eventual success, building a global empire of over 25,000 locations, it just proves emphatically that the American entrepreneurial spirit has no age limit.
And speaking of immigrant food redefined by American ingenuity, we have to talk about pizza's regional twists.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture of immigration, pizza arrived via Neapolitan immigrants in cities like New York and Chicago in the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
But Americans didn't just adopt it.
No, they enthusiastically reinvented it, creating a thriving $46 billion industry tailored to local needs and resources.
And the regional variations are a perfect culinary map of American culture. Take Chicago's deep dish. I mean, that's barely pizza, it's a casserole.
It's a commitment. It's this hearty, thick, inverted pie cheese first, then toppings, then sauce. And it's designed to be substantial and warm, perfect for those long, cold Midwest winters.
Contrast that with New York style, a thin, coal-fired crust designed to be foldable.
Making it quick and easy for someone rushing on foot through the city. The geometry of the food reflects the lifestyle. Then you have Detroit's square deep dish style, originally baked in steel utility trays.
Which gives it those signature crispy caramelized cheese edges.
Exactly. This regional variety is even tied to American commerce. The massive scale of the industry is possible, partly due to the high volume of dairy production, especially in states like Wisconsin.
It's the ultimate unifying food, despite all its variations. Americans apparently consume over 3 billion pies a year.
It's the ideal example of how an immigrant food becomes completely central to the national diet, reflecting local adaptations and economic opportunities.
And that leads us directly to considering the melting pot reality. This raises an important question. Is the U.S. still a melting pot? Or is it maybe better described as a salad bowl?
Where distinct cultures maintain their identity while contributing to the whole.
Right.
The reality is a complex mix. The U.S. is built on continuous immigration from over 200 countries, and that enriches cuisine, music, traditions, everything, all at once.
You see this blending everywhere, from major cultural touchstones like Irish St. Patrick's Day parades to smaller, community-led Mexican Cinco de Mayo fiestas.
And cities like Los Angeles boast over 140 nationalities and speak more than 220 languages. It's a microcosm of global diversity.
The influence is profound. Our sources confirm that Hispanics are the largest minority group in the U.S. now, and they're driving economic progress, massively enriching the arts, cuisine, and especially language, giving rise to blends like Spanglish.
And while this blend creates this vibrant culture, the transition itself, as noted in the sources, it often sparks these ongoing national debates about integration, assimilation, and maintaining cultural identity.
Now for the fun part, the things that confuse everyone else in the world. Quirky habits and rites of passage.
The confusion for outsiders is real.
It is, especially regarding measurement and social etiquette. Americans stubbornly stick to Fahrenheit for temperatures, where freezing is 32 degrees.
It's a system that just leaves most visitors scrambling to do mental math.
And the date format. Writing dates in that peculiar MMDDYYY format is unique, and it leads to endless confusion in international business and communication.
It's a minor but really pervasive linguistic barrier.
But the truly distinctive cultural habit has to be the ritual of tipping. It's standard to tip 15–20% for service in restaurants, bars, and now increasingly in other service industries.
And this custom has its roots in post-Civil War attempts to emulate European high society, and later as this kind of economic compact to support low-wage workers.
It creates a specific social dynamic, and it's a source of genuine puzzlement and often frustration for visitors from countries where service charges are already included.
And alongside that is the pervasive habit of small talk, that casual, how's it going, which often requires no detailed response.
Right, it just builds rapport, but it confuses people who expect a literal, in-depth answer to the question.
Then you have the social milestones that define the transition to adulthood.
The Sweet 16. It's a huge cultural moment for many teens, symbolizing that transition to greater independence.
And these celebrations can be really lavish parties, fancy dresses, and often, a car as a gift in more affluent areas. It reflects this blend of societal norms and media influence, emphasizing youth culture.
And of course, the granddaddy of them all, the 21st birthday, which marks the legal drinking age across the U.S.
That milestone is universally celebrated with significant fanfare, the first legal bar toast, for example, and it's a powerful rite of passage.
And these cultural markers, they have regional variations, like the quinceañeras celebrated in Hispanic communities to mark a girl's 15th birthday.
All of which reinforces the sheer regional variety we touched on earlier. The vastness of the U.S. means travel within the country can genuinely feel like visiting multiple different nations.
The difference in pace and dialect is stark. You have the rapid-fire, focused NYC hustle contrasted with the slower, more welcoming Texas twang of the South and Southwest.
And these differences extend to food, the iconic lobster rolls of New England versus the varied regional barbecue styles across the South and Midwest.
And most significantly, this regionalism is reflected in the laws. The U.S. has massive variations in law from state to state, especially on highly charged issues like gun rights or even archaic blue laws that restrict alcohol sales on Sundays.
And that's a direct echo of the original settlement patterns, the Puritan influence in the Northeast leading to stricter social laws versus the independent frontier spirit of the West. So now we shift our focus to the structural pillars and global reach. We'll zero in on the governance, the foundational documents, and the immense global influence of the U.S.
Let's start by revisiting that fundamental commitment to freedom that underpins the entire structure, the pluralist foundation.
It's such a critical structural choice. The U.S. Constitution and the First Amendment deliberately avoid declaring an official national language or religion.
It's a direct commitment to pluralism.
Exactly. It ensures that the state does not impose a cultural or spiritual monolith on its citizens.
And that structural choice has profound, tangible consequences. Because there is no official language, the nation boasts incredible linguistic vibrancy. Over 300 languages are spoken at home,
which necessitates government policies on language access, making sure federal documents and information are available to diverse populations. It also influences how national holidays are observed, reflecting a calendar that accommodates multiple faiths and origins.
And this commitment to freedom of expression and faith is enshrined in the enduring document.
The U.S. Constitution, drafted in 1787, it is nothing short of remarkable. It's among the oldest written national charters still active in the world today.
That longevity is a testament not just to the power of its core principles, separation of powers, checks and balances, but to its designed flexibility.
It's surprisingly brief, only 4,543 words, yet it manages to structure the entire federal government. Its endurance is managed through the amendment process. It has only been amended 27 times in over 230 years.
And that structure has inspired countless democracies worldwide, serving as a global template for limited government.
And here's a fun detail that really humanizes this monumental text. The word Pennsylvania is actually misspelled within the original document itself.
No way.
Yes. It just reminds you that even the most foundational, world-changing documents are ultimately created by humans working under pressure.
However, the structural complexity means we have to address the unique governance of the territories, which introduces some very nuanced legal definitions.
This is a complex area, especially concerning the concept of unincorporated status. This legal designation comes from the Supreme Court's insular cases decisions from the early 20th century.
So what do those cases decide, essentially?
Essentially, the court determined that the Constitution does not fully apply to these territories of right, but only by act of Congress.
That is a crucial distinction.
It is. It means that while residents of territories like Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands hold U.S. citizenship, they lack full voting rights in federal elections.
Well, they can't vote for the U.S. president.
No. And they don't have full congressional representation. Despite this, many residents pay some federal taxes and contribute to the economy and the military.
And this inherent complexity sparks these ongoing, fierce debates about statehood versus independence and full representation versus their current status.
Right. But these territories still play vital strategic roles. Guam is a crucial military hub in the Pacific, and the Virgin Islands contribute significantly to the tourism economy.
So it links the nation's past imperial reach to its modern strategic goals.
Right. Now, shifting from governance to the ultimate benchmark of ingenuity, let's talk about innovation and exploration.
The ultimate benchmark has to be the Apollo program and the moon landing. On July 20, 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin aboard Apollo 11 became the first humans to walk on the lunar surface.
And to date, 12 Americans have walked on the moon. That moment symbolized this massive triumph of NASA's ambition and coordination.
The scale of the program was just colossal, involving nearly 400,000 people across the nation.
Moreover, the program drove major technological advances that were later spun off into commercial applications, things like computer microchip technology, advancements in materials science like memory foam, and modern satellite communication systems.
It truly redefined what was technologically possible. And here's that fun, poignant detail our sources uncovered. The flag they planted still stands on the moon today.
But it's now completely faded to white from all the solar radiation.
Faded to white, wow.
And that same ingenuity fuels a colossal economy and cultural exports. The U.S. consistently boasts the world's largest nominal gross domestic product, or GDP.
Driven by innovation centers like Silicon Valley, which just redefined the knowledge economy, and finance powerhouses like Wall Street.
And this massive economic power translates directly into cultural soft power. Hollywood films, pop music, massive fast food chains like McDonald's. They've profoundly globalized American culture, often setting global trends in media and diet.
You see it everywhere, right? Icons like Star Wars, the ubiquity of blue jeans. American fashion sense influences style and media consumption worldwide.
And it isn't just one-way traffic either. This soft power blends with local traditions, creating fascinating cultural hybrids.
Like U.S. hip-hop, heavily influencing K-pop production.
Exactly. Or the reinvention of American fast food to suit Asian palates. It's a dynamic global conversation driven by U.S. cultural output.
So what does this all mean? We've covered everything from the frozen vastness of Alaska and the complex legal status of its territories to the rapid-fire culinary adaptations needed for a New York slice of pizza.
All framed within one of the world's oldest governing documents.
Exactly. The takeaway for you, the listener, is that the USA is dynamic, it's geographically epic, historically complex, and it's constantly blending culture at a massive scale.
And these in-depth nuggets of information, they successfully challenge the easy, two-dimensional stereotypes that we so often see. They highlight the deep internal contradictions and the resilience of the nation.
It just underscores that incredible internal diversity. It's a land defined by extremes. The highest peak in North America and the lowest basin, all under a single governmental framework that, in its founding, deliberately refused to mandate a single language or religion.
And that inherent tension between unity and pluralism is what makes the nation such a fascinating case study.
It really is.
And that leads us to a final provocative thought for you to mull over. We've seen that the U.S. champions religious and linguistic pluralism internally, defending the right for over 300 languages to be spoken at home, enshrined in the First Amendment.
Right.
Yet its cultural exports, its film, its major brands, its English language media have overwhelmingly shaped global media and diet, often acting as a homogenizing force worldwide. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, how does the undeniable worldwide influence of American culture, its massive soft power, affect the maintenance of the very diversity that the nation's founding documents seek so explicitly to protect at home?
Wow, that is a brilliant thought experiment to carry forward. The whimsy and complexity of the USA await your further exploration, whether you want to research the incredible legacy of Oberlin College or just try to find the best Detroit-style square pizza near you, you're now much better informed. Thanks for joining us for The Deep Dive.